You've been waiting all week for that Saturday show. Tune in, see what happened, let your troubles go. Work real hard, now it's time to take it slow. Kick back and relax with that Saturday show.
Good morning, Albuquerque, and welcome to another episode of That Saturday Show, brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and as you can expect, we have a great show for you today. And we'll be joined, and you'll be hearing from our director, Tom Dent, a little later on in this show. Trouble in California for the Republican cult. Judge freezes the hypocritical abortion ban in Texas. State Fair is suffering from major losses in attendance while failing to check vaccination cards thoroughly. And Albuquerque Public Schools just can't figure out what to do about the violence in the schools. We have wonderful entertainment for you today and great interviews, including a riveting discussion with our panel about police, local elections, and so much more. But first, let me get this off my chest. What the hell is happening to these local Gunga Dins, also known as Uncle Toms, who, despite the clear messaging that lets every thinking person know that Republican means racism and fascism and sexism, why would you allow yourself to be affiliated with a group of people who are determined to wipe you out, unless they want to use you as a front for pushing the agenda put forth by the orange fascist himself? So, who was Gunga Din, you say? Gunga Din was an Indian kid who died warning the British that the Indian liberators were attacking to take back their country. Thankfully, he died betraying his own people. So, Larry Elder, how much did you get paid for the disastrous campaign to recall Governor Newsom in California? You fraud, you opportunist, you sellout. The California governor handed you your useless Trumper butt on a platter, and you are left standing all alone like the apologist for slavery and police brutality you have proven yourself to be. If you ever had a black card, it is officially revoked. On another note, our district attorney is back on track with pursuing a ban on militias here, and that's a good thing. But why are we still waiting to hear about the Stephen Baca trial? How long does it take to bring a gun-toting fascist to trial for attempted murder? How long does it take? Keep your eyes open, folks. The fascists and the racists are returning to the scene of the crime of January 6th in Washington, D.C. This time they're demanding release of their insurrectionist buddies who tried to destroy the Capitol and kill members of Congress, including a very confused Mike Pence. Maybe he spent so much time with his head up Trump's butt that his brains are fried. Did he forget the chant heard round the world? Hang Mike Pence! The crazies arrived today while most of us are observing an International Day of Peace. I just had to get that off my chest. So, welcome, Tom Dent. What have you got to get off of your chest today?
Well, I got to get this off really quickly. This week I got off the phone with Bianca Succa-Belknap, who is the executive director of New Energy Economy, which is one of New Mexico's leading climate change groups. They're also a Pajola group and member of the Pew Center. And they are still deep in their deliberations about approving the Avangrid PNM merger. And if you have been following this, you've been seeing all sorts of lovely, wholesome ads for Avangrid. But if you dig really deep, the state of Maine, Connecticut, countries in South America feel like they've been cheated. They've had their power cut off. They've been recalling mergers and state deals with Avangrid. And what's happening right now is the Public Regulation Commission that makes the final decision on this is wrapping up their talks about the Four Corners power plant and the energy up there. But Bianca says that this is prime time to put political pressure on your PRC commissioners. You can contact your PRC commissioners through nmprc.org. That's nmprc.org, or you can go to the New Energy Economy Facebook page for more information. I believe the head of the commission is Cynthia Hall, who used to be their legal advisor. I met her. She's an extremely smart person. So call her, call your commissioners, call the PRC and say, New Mexico is not ready for this merger. It is not good for our economy. It is not good for New Mexico.
We need some good news after that. Let's hear from Hassani. Hassani, bring us some good news. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. The goal of this segment is to inspire and uplift you, the viewer, with nothing but good news. Let's jump right in, shall we? Our first story reads like this. Adorable footage shows the moment a family of ducks checked out a university library after they waddled in off the street. Let's learn a little bit more, shall we? The mother and her 5 ducklings stunned staff and students when they wandered in through an open door at the University of Nottingham's George Green Library. Emma Busby from the University of Nottingham Libraries said, "It had been very hot that week and we had to leave our doors open for some extra air movement. The ducks came in and walked around for a while, and Mom in front and the ducklings in a line behind her. Mom was totally calm and unflustered after they apparently checked out the range of books on the shelves. You often come across ducks in seemingly odd places around campus," she said, "but that was definitely the oddest place I've ever seen them. It did bring some excitement into an otherwise peaceful evening." Now here's some video footage of the duck family. Now isn't that good news? Now, what do you call a cow and 2 ducks? Milk and quackers. And don't do that. That was funny. Now, let's move on to our next story. Solar-powered refrigeration trucks will cut pollution from idling diesel engines. A provider of solar and battery-powered systems is set to outfit refrigeration trucks with solar-paneled roofs that would cut emissions while keeping cool 1,000 trailers full of food. Under the terms of a new agreement, XL Fleet will supply battery-empowered electronic systems for the first 1,000 units of electrical refrigerator trailer solutions. XL Fleet's mission is to help corporations and their fleets lower operating costs while helping them achieve their green goals. Solar Systems captures the sun's energy with roof-mounted solar modules and then store the energy in auxiliary batteries used to power lift gates, in-cab air conditioning, refrigeration, and lighting. Solar panels mounted on the roof of the trailer will be used for charging of batteries and powering systems when idling or during loading and unloading of the trailer. The system will be equipped with a thermal management system to enable year-round operations across North America. Now, isn't that good news? All right for green goals. Now, have you seen the new movie called Truck? Me neither. I've just seen the trailer. Now, let's check in with our favorite sassy grandmother, Little Big Mama. What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Thank you, Hassani. Like my new dude. I just got a quick story to tell your viewers about my horrible accident years ago. The doctor told me that I probably wouldn't be able to walk again after being in an accident with a newspaper delivery truck. Let's just say that I was crushed by the news. Bye, baby.
She is a blast. Let's not have any crushing news next week. The best way to turn a frown upside down is to get goo-goo for good news. Hope we made you smile. See you right here next time on That Saturday Show with more good news.
Thank you so much, Hassani. And we're back, and we're joined again with Tom. And Zach is back with us again. Glad to have you back with us. We've got some hot topics that we want to pick up today, so let's just jump right in.
Well, Zach, you were working on that Crime Matters More campaign by Police Union President Sean Willoughby. Have you been following what's going on with it?
No, I haven't heard too much recently. They haven't put out a new video on their YouTube channel, their propaganda channel. No, they haven't said anything recently. The last I saw of Sean Willoughby was during the Valley Community Policing Council monthly meeting on the 26th. Mm-hmm. I was supposed to be on that panel, but...
Did he make any interesting statements? You said that you made comments on that Zoom meeting, right?
Yes. I made comments because the topic of conversation switched from the Crime Matters More campaign to police safety. They didn't say really anything too interesting regarding the DOJ consent decree or anything like that, but just about officer safety in general, yeah.
And the thing that's got everybody up in arms right now is the, I guess they had a national police chiefs meeting, and U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland laid down some the groundwork for newer consent decrees that don't necessarily apply to the one that's been in place for 6 or 8 years here in Albuquerque.
That's right.
But the police department and Mayor Keller's administration are saying that they're going to work with City Council and try to implement some of these new changes. Like, for instance, I believe that Dr. Ginger and his team, he has 7 to 11 people. We paid close to $7.5 million for the independent monitors team right now. And they all live out of state, and they all fly in here, and they, I believe, manage more than just Albuquerque. And Garland says that if you're going to set up a consent decree in one city, you have to concentrate only on that city. And there's all sorts of measures to improve efficiency and, make a lot more of the duties of that part of the team rather than one thing that APD is complaining about, which is like, we have to bloat our internal affairs department, and that takes people off the street in order to comply with the DOJ and all this, and we're hamstrung, and we have to do all this stuff, and that's one of the complaints right now by Sean Willoughby. He's going like, 100 sworn officers are ready to retire this year, and in our Crime Matters More, we have exit interviews with disgruntled officers that say that we're retiring because we're hamstrung by the DOJ. And it's like, if we get into a fight with somebody and we hurt their finger, then 2 witnesses and 3 cops that are there, they all have to sit down and write reports and comply with all this. And there's much more efficient ways of doing this. But people like Willoughby, people like Rob Perry, who used to be the city attorney, the old Berry administration have fought tooth and nail against implementing the consent decree properly in Albuquerque.
And it's such a simple thing for them to just follow the roadmap. First thing that needs to happen is if anybody needs to retire, it should be Sean Willoughby. You know, he's the stick in the mud. He's the obstacle here. And he needs to go. And I'm just sick of the whining and the complaining that comes out of his mouth every time he starts talking. You know, let's look at those uninvestigated cases of excessive force that are still lingering out there. You want to get something done, you want to get the DOJ off our backs, fine. Get those cases investigated and put a procedure in place so you don't get a log jam like that in the future. Stop whining, stop complaining, and do your job.
Well, they bloat internal investigations, but there's, 320 excessive force investigations that are backlogged that haven't got to the DA or the CPOA, the Citizens Police Oversight.
Well, and I'd say the most alarming part is that even in these videos, their propaganda videos that they have, the one of the cops, I believe it was in the third video, he even says that they're not afraid of getting in trouble for these use of force cases. They said they're not afraid to use excessive force. They're afraid of getting in trouble for small things caught on camera, like taking off their seatbelt before they get out to, arrest somebody or brutalize somebody, right? Or get caught cussing on camera, stuff like that. They're not afraid of getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they bloat that artificially just to make the monitors team look bad and the consent decree look bad.
That's all it is.
That's the goal.
All that is, yeah. I tell you one thing that I do agree with Attorney General Garland on, and that is that if there's going to be a monitoring team here, they need to focus exclusively on Albuquerque. The cost will go down for one thing, but this city deserves the full attention, of the DOJ, and not this nonsense of running around trying to handle several different cases around the country.
Well, one of the craziest things I heard on one of these exit interviews is they go like, we've been stymied, we can't be on the streets, we have to spend all this time learning all these regulations and the consent decree and how to de-escalate and all this. They've been working per officer. They're working on this in earnest for about 2 years. But how many years before that had they established an excessive pattern of excessive force? What, 30, 40 years?
So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And we're just looking for one excuse after the next, to just drag this thing out. And the amount of money that the police union has spent, buying ads in the press and running TV announcements and holding press conferences, that is all a scam. He needs to stop that and get down to the business of putting together a good plan for policing in this town.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's probably close to $100,000 that the union spent on this already.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Something close to it, yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't doubt it. So, speaking of, we've got some local election news that's happened lately here. Our good old county sheriff who loves the Republicans, Manny Gonzalez, is whining and complaining again, but I think it's all a setup so he could do private fundraising anyway. What's happened there?
Yeah, well, the city clerk denied his public funding twice, and then they took a suit to the first district court judge, and he knocked them down as well and said, no, I find you not eligible for public funding.
So what's he going to do now? Pass the plate at Legacy and Calvary every Sunday until election day to raise his money? Like I said, I think it's a setup. I think he always wanted to just go to private funding, and all this whining about the $600,000 was just belly aching and a front.
Well, like they said about the militia, the police force, certain people in the military, they all go to the same churches, they all run in the same club. And when I was researching some of Willoughby's statements, I ran across an interview with him when he was talking about policing in Arizona on Fox and Friends, and they thanked him for being a regular guest on the show.
Fox and Friends of all places.
Oh, wow, that's news to me.
Fox and Friends, yeah. Fox, but not Friends.
Not at all. Not ours, anyway.
Far from
The
it. Right?
anti-vax statement, but you know they're listed by President Biden as one of the 5 corporations in America that are fully vaccinated.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. Yeah. So what else is happening, Tom? What's going on? What else are we looking at here in the news?
Well, you mentioned earlier that the mandate on wearing masks indoors it has been extended to October the 15th.
Right.
And it's football season, it's Halloween, Labor Day just happened. You look on TV at these college games and NFL games across the country, there's 5,000, 6,000 people in the stands, they're shoulder to shoulder. None of them are wearing masks.
Well, I'm sure that the State Fair would love to see 5,000 or 6,000 people, but their attendance is down an estimated 80%. I was there Monday night, for example. I just stopped in for a brief moment to see what was happening, and I was amazed from the moment I got there. First of all, no lines to get in anywhere. No lines at all. But what really surprised me was, as I approached the first gate, there was a woman who was supposed to check my vaccine card, right? She was off over in a corner someplace trying to get some food from one of her colleagues that had shown up. And so I just kept walking. Next thing I knew, I heard her yelling, "Oh, I'm supposed to check your vaccine card." So she puts her food down, she runs over to me, and she looks at the vaccine card, right? Just quickly. And I said to her, "Now, how do you know that this vaccine card belongs to me? How do you know that the name on this card is me?" And she looked at me and she whispered, "Well, we just think that New Mexicans are really honest people." Honest people? Come on, give me a break.
In one of the most corrupt states in the Union. Yeah.
Exactly. So they've got a mini super spreader event going on at the State Fair because they're not even confirming that these vaccine cards are legitimate or that they belong to the people that are flashing them. That gives me great concern.
Yeah, one thing that ties this in with policing, you were saying to me the other day that, APD is not really welcome at the State Fair, but the State Fair property itself is technically owned by the state, so that's why you see state troopers there. And isn't it interesting that over the past weekend, over 2 or 3 days, the state police team is in and makes close to 100 arrests.
Yeah.
And APD is too tied up with bureaucratic stuff, but everybody can do overtime at big box stores,
Oh, sure.
They're just gummed up bureaucratically, hamstrung by the union. We need to do what a lot of people suggested to Keller when he first got into office. It's like tear down the department from the inside out and get people like Sean Willoughby and the dirty cops up and rebuild.
That's where we need to head.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So they can stop complaining about being handcuffed.
Yeah, it's a matter of rebuilding and doing the job right. It's not defunding the police or these protests like the poor wife of the cop that got shot during that shootout. She was basically saying the same thin blue line, Sean Willoughby, crime matters more stuff on TV at a press conference. I feel for the lady. I'm sorry the officer got shot in the line of duty, but they don't need to use that as a publicity stunt like Manny Gonzalez did, taking that guy who lived close to Rio Rancho, whose wife got shot, to Washington, D.C. to sit and watch Trump orate and lie.
Exactly. it's just one stunt after another with these folks, and they're not sincere. I think I mentioned a couple of shows ago, that Sean Willoughby's on the news talking about his officers that got shot, and not one mention of the kid that got killed at Washington Middle School, or the other shootings of kids, and the fact that kids are bringing guns to school. What's happening here? And where's APS in all of this? And why isn't there a relationship between APS and the police department to try to do something about it? It's clear that the APS police staff is not going to do anything about it. It's clear that APS administration is befuddled in terms of what to do about it. So where's Sean Willoughby? Where are the police officers when they could actually do something that makes good sense, that brings safety, to our kids, but not even a mention of those kids?
Yeah, they've not really even cracked down on the parents. And the dad has, 2 former charges against him in the past?
Yeah.
And I hate to bring up the past. I was listening to the radio on the way down, and they said that they were going to, they're postponing the trial of Vincent or Victor or whatever, the guy that was involved with the Victoria Martin horrible murder and burning her body and dismemberment and stuff like that. And I and other people before have said, aside from this bloating and not being able to do their job, and they have this thing called the Real Crime Center, why aren't they networking with CYFD and mental health organizations and stuff like that to track these cases? And that guy Victor had just got out of jail. He was one of her mom's jail friends.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it sounds like they're more worried about preventing car theft. Because they can always tout, the decrease in auto theft, but they can't talk about anything else, really, it seems to me.
Well, we could go on with this.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more we could talk about. But I think now let's...
There's a lot more
let's hear
shows.
from one of our artists in resident, Mr. Cliff Deiner.
Great.
You're watching That Saturday Show. I'm Jim Harvey, your host. And we have with us today Cliff Deiner. Cliff is a resident here in Nob Hill. He's a volunteer here at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. He's an incredible artist who recently staged a one-man show here at the center. If you missed it, you missed an incredible show. I can tell you, because I bought some of his art. And so we're happy to have him here today, and we've invited him in to talk about Cliff and show some of the work that he created. Let's just find out what motivates Cliff Deiner. All right? Deiner, Cliff Deiner. I remember that when I start showing off the pieces I bought.
D-I-N-E-R.
D-I. Okay.
Well, it's D-E-I.
Like Route 66
Deiner.
Right?
That's right.
So, Cliff, welcome to That Saturday Show.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's a good thing to have you back again after that wonderful show that you did here.
Thank you.
And so I'd like for you to talk a little bit about how you got to Albuquerque and what got you started on the path of incredible art that you created.
I came to Albuquerque on what I thought was a spiritual and a awakening quest. And for 5 months during the fall and winter of 1986-87, I lived in the Sandia Mountains by myself, and I felt totally in touch and in tune with nature. And I had, I was coming off a divorce, and my life was in turmoil, and I just decided to make some big changes. I have a degree in environmental chemistry from the University of Minnesota.
Wow.
And soon after my divorce, I began to express myself through art and that was over 30 years ago
Good
now.
grief.
So a gentleman that I met in Indianapolis, Reed Nesbitt, he began to solidify for me my own path. Although different than his, he encouraged me to create my art and my own individual style.
That's fantastic.
And one of the things that I see is there may be as many collectors of art as there are artists.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
And everybody likes a little something different. Some people will go maybe a little more avant-garde. Others want something they're going to hang over their sofa that's going to match the color on their sofa. Yeah, I'll take that one.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I did an interview quite a few years ago in Chicago with a gallery owner, and that was our conversation about how you need to let art define for you exactly what you're doing, as opposed to let your home furnishings define your art. So
Right.
you're right on target with that one.
Well, shall we begin with
Yes.
pieces of the art?
Yeah,
or-
you're a mixed medium artist, and
Yeah,
that's one thing that really
one
got
of
my
the things
attention.
I wanted to show first off, and I'll just kind of switch this around so people can see.
Yeah.
This one, it took a while to do, because as you can see, it's a three-dimensional
Yeah.
composition. It's not flat against the canvas. It's got protruding the rectangles, triangles, and I had to glue each layer and kind of build it up so that it would present itself as such, and then it can hang on a wall with the wire.
That's great.
And the next one we'll take a look at is this one. I call this melange. Now,
Good name.
one of the things about this is I had the red, and you can just barely see the triangles underneath it. But then I said, well, this isn't going to do. Red on red canvas, that's not going to be the theme of this one. So I began to add the color. Then I used gravity to gradually allow the colors to flow one into another. And when I finally got done, I thought, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know when I begin something how good or how bad it's going to be. As many failures, or excuse me, as many successes as I might have just as many, if not more, failures. And this is a key thing for an artist, to be self-critical of their art and to say, hey, that just doesn't work. Begin again. Practice, 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 and eventually, hopefully, you'll come up with something that someone would actually purchase, or more to the point, I think, they like. It's gravy on the mashed potatoes if they purchase it. But you don't go, or I personally don't go for, boy, I want to sell this. This one is one of my more hard edge techniques. This is all done with permanent marker, and I used the bottom. I believe this was a oatmeal box. I just took that oatmeal box, put it on the canvas, and drew like this. And I had another object I used. Then I used a ruler and dots and little dots, and it's basically red and black, although this has got almost endless variations that you can pursue
A lot of
in
movement.
this type of work.
A lot of movement there.
And I guess this would be the fourth one here. This technique I've explored in probably half dozen to a dozen works of art, where I cut out the bottom layer, glue that down, glue on the subsequent layer, and then build those layers up until you get something that has a multi-layered, multicolored effect on the canvas. It's perfectly flat to the canvas. If I've done it properly, sometimes I have to weight down in between gluings to be sure it stays flat to the canvas. And then the final piece I like to show you, I call this imprisoned color. And because the heavy, thick black lines almost remind me of a fence. And a gentleman by the name of Aaron Karp, I could also call this homage or homage to Aaron Karp, based in Albuquerque, has made a career out of stunning works, very large scale works. One of his works currently resides at the Albuquerque International Sunport.
Wow.
And his work involves more fluidity and movement than mine does. Mine's just a simple concept, but basically what you do, believe it or not, is layer down masking tape and you paint. Then you add another layer, then you add another layer, and this is just a simple interpretation of that technique.
So, Cliff, we've got about a minute and a half left,
okay.
And what I'd really like to do is give you time to just free flow about influence and inspiration. What's your influence? Yes. What inspires you?
When I first came to Albuquerque and eventually came out of the mountains and got a place to live, every night I would go to the Albuquerque Public Library and study art history. This gave me a basis upon which, okay, who do I really feel influenced by? And I found Vasily Kandinsky, Russian abstract, well, he was basically an abstract expressionist, one of the first ones. So that's probably who I would mention primarily, Kandinsky.
Kandinsky, great artist. So, inspiration, you sort of wake up sometimes and you just start thinking about what you want to create.
Well, yes, this is very interesting because when I had the deadline approaching for the show, to create on demand versus, well, I'll paint today, maybe I won't paint today. No, I had to work to a deadline, get stuff done, put those wires on the back door and get it out the door. So I, am beginning my career in actually marketing and selling my art, and this is a different process than when you're on your own, just kind of
creating for yourself.
It's as the same with my writing. I'll write today. I won't write today. If you have a deadline, it puts an additional pressure on you.
Absolutely. Well, we want to get you in some of those galleries. That's what we want.
Well, we got started here with the wonderful Peace and Justice Center.
We sure did.
I just wanted to briefly mention, as a plug for the Peace and Justice Center, if y'all haven't been by the Peace and Justice Center, you really should come by. It's got a revolving art show, once a month, a new show, but the people are doing fantastic work here at the Albuquerque Peace and Justice Center for the rights of the individual and also for those disenfranchised people to what I'll call the system.
Thank you so much for that, Cliff.
You're
I
very
really
welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for that. We've been talking with Cliff Deiner, mixed medium artist, resident of the great Nob Hill community, transplant from other places, but he's been here long enough that we can claim him as our own. And we thank you for being here today, Cliff.
Well, thank you, Jim. I greatly appreciate this opportunity.
All right. And back to the studio. So I have often given myself a lot of credit as probably the consummate jazz aficionado. Nobody loves jazz more than me, I've always said. And then I met Ronald Brewington. Ronald is not only a jazz aficionado, but he is a jazz saxophone player. And somewhere down the road, we're going to get Ronald to come back into the studio here and play for us. But when this man walked up to me one day and showed me photographs of some of his favorite artists, and he just started talking, I said, I got to have a conversation with him, and I've got to have that conversation on camera. So this is going to be a good conversation. I just know it is, because I'm going to bask in his wisdom and his knowledge and welcome Ronald Brewington, jazz aficionado, jazz historian, saxophone instructor, to that Saturday show. Welcome, Ronald.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be talking about jazz and to be talking about the saxophone. It's a great honor, and I thank you for inviting me.
Great. So tell me, what got you started? What put you on this path?
It all started very early. I was born and raised in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I come from a family of 9, and I was next to the youngest. We never had a television. I didn't see a TV till I was 14 years old.
Wow.
But we had a radio.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Charlie Parker, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Dexter Gordon, Billie Holiday, Dinah Washington, Sarah Vaughan. I was exposed to all that. My sister, Arlene, she studied the guitar. My brother Otis was taking clarinet lessons. My cousin Thomas was a great violinist.
Wow.
And he wanted to join the symphony orchestra. But in those days, they had no African Americans in the symphony orchestra. So he went to Europe, and he played for the Queen of England.
Wow.
He couldn't get no exposure in his own country, so he went to Europe.
Yeah, a lot of musicians had to do that.
And he played in Europe. So I started taking piano lessons. I studied piano for 2 years. And then one night I was listening to a Boston radio station, and I heard a gentleman playing the saxophone, tenor sax. The tone was just so beautiful. It just wiped me out. I didn't know who it was, but the next day I signed up for saxophone lessons, and later I found out that it was Gene Emmons who I was listening to. And I was blessed that my saxophone teacher was the chairman of the Reed department at Berklee College of Music.
Wow.
So he says to me, he says, why don't you enroll in the school? So I said, I can't afford it. So he helped me get a scholarship.
Fantastic.
A 2-year scholarship for Berklee. And in Berklee, you have 2 private teachers for saxophone, and he was one of them. And then I had another teacher named Andy McGee. He taught me how to improvise. And I was listening to a jazz station one day, and Sonny Stitt happened to be on the show.
Sonny Stitt.
Yes. So I called up the station, and I asked him, can I have a lesson with him? And I went to a house in Dorchester, Massachusetts, outside of Roxbury, where he was staying. And he gave me a lesson, and the first thing he told me, he says, I usually don't give lessons like this. He says, I give my lessons on the stage.
Okay.
And then he told me that, he says, during the days of Duke Ellington and Count Basie, the members of those orchestras couldn't afford to go to Juilliard or Berkeley. He said that was their University of Music.
That's right.
Playing with Duke Ellington and Count Basie, playing with those big orchestras. He said that's how they learn how to play. And I found out later on he was right, because when I moved to San Francisco, I enrolled in City College there in San Francisco, and I joined their jazz orchestra and their jazz ensemble, and that's how I really learned how to play with other instruments, was being exposed to the orchestra.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Sonny Sit's daughter is a dear friend of mine back in Washington, D.C., Katia. Was a radio announcer on one of my favorite stations back there, WPFW. And whenever we're together, we've always talked about Sonny. But, saxes, I had a sax in my family as well, in Don Redman, who wrote G Baby Ain't I Good to You. Right. And I've got a picture of him with his sax hanging up in the house. And so I did not... it's amazing, though, because piano was taught in my house. My grandmother taught piano. And you know what? She never bothered to teach me, so I felt as if I got shortchanged, But that doesn't stop me from loving this music. Ronald, thank you for coming in today. And like I said, I'm going to hold you to it. I want you to come back and play for us.
I will.
Will you do that?
Yes, I will. It'll be a great honor.
Wonderful. We've been talking with Ronald Brewington, jazz aficionado and master of the sax and sax instructor. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right. Now, this next interview is with someone who is also a musician, but she's not here today to talk about music. She's here today to talk about the International Day of Peace, and she's taken the lead at the Center for Peace and Justice on making that happen. And so I want to welcome the incredible, the exciting, the fabulous. What else can I add to your pedigree there?
Your friend.
Halima Christy, my friend. Welcome to that Saturday show.
Thank you.
Tell us about the International Day of Peace.
Yeah. The ABQ Center, Jim, I was looking this up. The first one that I could find the record for was in 2013. So we've been doing them pretty much every year, these celebrations for the International Day of Peace, which is sometimes the World Peace Day, sometimes known as that. And it's observed every year on September 21st since 1981. And then they've been doing a little bit more each year, And so now they have these international themes that they do around the world, things like that. And the one this year is called Recovering Better for an Equitable and Sustainable World. And I think they're trying to bring in the fact that everybody was kind of shut down last year for COVID and all that. And it's, it's kind of hard for them, but they've got a lot of response this year. So at our center, we're doing another Peace Day. And just want to say a little more before I show you the menu of it.
Great.
And because we are the Center for Peace and Justice.
Right.
And we've been noticing that around the world, a lot of the struggles for peace are obstructed by colonization and a lot of worse stuff going on around the world, not just in our country. So, as Mahatma Gandhi said, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way, so we have to be that way to peace. And as Black Panther Party Chairman Fred Hampton, you may remember him, he's my generation. I'm a little older than most people around here.
He's an old friend of mine from Chicago.
Yeah. I remember him very well. He said, you can't stop one revolution. You may stop one revolutionary at a time, but you can't kill the revolution itself.
So true.
And so we see it, this peace revolution is going to just keep developing, keep expanding. So, how do we find our way to this path of peace this year? This, one method is still quite simple: to come together as a people, to let go of our petty political differences and strive more peace, more justice. So we're doing that this year at the center. Martin Luther King said, and he's our inspiration this year as usual, the ones who love peace have to learn to organize as efficiently as those who love war. So we have to step in and put some energy in this. And so at the center, we're committed to peace, but we say without equivocation, I have to read this, that without justice, there will be no peace. And I don't even know who I'm quoting on that, but I'm quoting somebody that I trust on that one. And then even Eisenhower said, though force can protect in emergency, only justice, fairness, consideration, and cooperation can finally lead men to the dawn of peace. So that's what we're about. I mean, we have to have this justice with our peace efforts.
So tell us about the program.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Okay, I'll show people. I think you were showing them, somebody was showing this.
Yeah, I think we've got it up
Yeah,
on
you've got it
screen.
up.
Yeah.
So we're going to start at 12 and we'll go through till about 7.
On what
Sunday
day?
the 19th.
Sunday the 19th.
Yeah. And we're going to open with the wonderful Lisa Lucero's Medicine Drum Circle. It's going to get us off with a prayer and some drumming to initiate the day. And then we'll have Prajola tables who are members of the Peace Center, the groups. Sometimes there's as many as 40 to 50 groups that belong to the Peace Center, and they've been invited to give presentations about what they do. And that'll be from 1 to 2 o'clock.
So Pajolas are peace and justice organizations
Yes.
linking arms.
Yes.
In other words, partners with us at the Peace Center.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Great.
And they'll be there as they can. And then the next thing from 2 to 3 o'clock, for several of these years, we've had a little program called Poems for Peace, that we've invited community people to come in, read their poems extemporaneously. They can say a poem. We've been big in Albuquerque for poetry, so this has been a wonderful thing every year. And Mary Owishi has hosted it several times, a former poet. I think she's still poet laureate, our wonderful Mary Owishi. And she's going to host it again this year with Gabrielle Baca.
Gabrielle, yeah.
Who's
great.
on the board now of the Peace Center. Is really interesting young woman.
Great.
She's going to work with that.
Good. So we've got about 30 seconds
Okay.
left here. Drive home one
I want to
of the most
mention one more
important
thing.
points.
UNA Albuquerque chapter.
United Nations Association.
Right. They will have a presentation for an hour hosted by Betsy Bailey. Sally Alice's Raging Grannies will be there for 15
Yay.
minutes. We have a dedication of the Albuquerque Peace Pole.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we got to have that with you, and I hope that our new president, Tonya Covington, will be there to sort of address this whole wonderful dedication.
Oh, she'll be there.
And then we're going to finish with an hour and a half of music and dancing from Las Otras, which is one of the best music dance people in our city.
Wonderful. Halima Christy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For letting us know, and we want
Looking
you all to be
forward to
there.
it.
All right, now, it's still Mental Health Month, and built into that is suicide prevention. So we're going to wrap up today's wonderful program with a performance by a group called When Darkness Falls. They are Acoma Laguna Pueblo members, and they're going to do a music song called Rest the Day. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
Before the sun falls, will you be forgiven? Well, rest today. Well, rest today. Before the sun falls, well, you'll be forgiven. Well, rest today. Well, rest today.